Hey, what's up? You haven't heard my voice in a second. It sounds terrible because I'm terribly sick, unfortunately. What's up, folks? This is Lauren Hazel. I am the Supreme Leader H, aka I am the Equation, the Story Brand Strategist, coming to you from the Bronx, New York City. It's 2019, baby. And if you're looking at the lovely screen, dude wipes. I discovered this at Target. I actually bought a pack because I was just like the packaging just caught my eye. But I thought it was probably the most appropriate picture because instead of writing a longer email, especially when I'm not feeling all that great, I decided to do a video and talk this out a bit. Probably would have been a good time to actually find a timer so that I don't go on and on before my voice starts cracking and breaking, as it is ought to do when I am this sick. But thank goodness the government shutdown, at least temporarily, is over because some folks got somewhere to go on a train or a plane, specifically a plane, and TSA taking 1,000 hours to check people into a checkpoint. And I don't want to be one of them people to be waiting for 7 hours to get on a goddamn hour and a half flight. It's just the whole irony of the whole thing would not be lost on me. But anyway, there's just so many things I've noticed. And the funny thing is, I'm not on Facebook all that much. I know there's been this whole wave of a whole bunch of people, particularly marketers, being very vocal about leaving platforms like Facebook. Like and for some of them, that's all their social media. It depends on the marketer. I think people's ages has a lot to do with it, and sort of what they grew up with has a lot to do with it. And I read this book, was actually I'm actually finishing up the book notes on, called Hooked, that explains a lot of the reasons why Facebook and Instagram and those things are built the way they are built and what makes them tick. This is a very interesting book. It's very technical. So if you're not a technical person, if you do not like big words or do not like theory that's in theory form, that book is going to be very difficult for you to read. And I'm not trying to insult people's intelligence, but I think it's important to be real. There's too many people trying to be nice instead of being truthful about certain things. Like, there are certain masterminds you shouldn't even think about going to if your business isn't at a certain place, because the information there is not going to help you. It's going to harm you more than it's going to help you. You know, there's certain books that are just a lot more technical and difficult to read if you don't already have a certain skill set or already coming to a certain place with some prior knowledge, because the book is not written for those um, who can't read. It's not written for those who just don't understand certain things. And it can be a very difficult read, which you can struggle through. But if you're too lazy to actually read properly what's in the email, I wouldn't recommend a book that actually requires a bit more effort. It's like Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. People claiming they read the shit, and it is very obvious that they didn't read it at all. It's not an easy book. These are not easy books to get through. It requires some thinking skills. And not that you don't necessarily have them, is that, maybe your skill set in terms of what you know, it's just not there yet. And guess what? You as a human being, as a person, you have the ability to prove that. If you feel that you're an idiot, you don't have to be an idiot anymore. If you recognize that maybe when it comes to this subject, I'm an idiot, I can go and get some books. I can go get some courses. I can go read some articles and not be such an idiot. That's the wonderful world of 2019 of living in technology. If you are stupid, you don't have to be stupid anymore, because there's other things out there that can educate you. And you could just be stupid in one subject, right? If you're not good at Excel, guess what? You can watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos and learn some basic skill sets about Excel. You don't have to be an idiot when it comes to Excel. And there's plenty of people who are idiots when it comes to Excel. Me be one of them, even though I use Excel a lot more than some people. I can get much better at it if I chose to. So I want to say that because some of you, unfortunately, will take words that I write or say and think of it as some type of attack, and it's not. I'm just being very realistic that you are an adult, I assume, if you're listening to this, and you have the ability to take care of yourself to a certain extent, right? You have an ability to improve if you choose to. And I like working with adults who want to improve in an area that hopefully I can help them improve in. Because I am not good at all things, nor do I try to be. But there's so many adults that just don't want to improve. And it's much more comfortable to screw around on Facebook making fun of people you shouldn't be making fun of, because at the end of the goddamn day, those people eventually have the power to ruin your goddamn life. Which branches into a discussion I wanted to have in the email that didn't go out, that was written because my fever was way over 100 degrees, and I was still trying to load stuff in, and for some reason it didn't go through. It might have been because I was a bit delusional, and I was just like, oh shit, I was really in a not good space because I was that sick, and I haven't been that sick in a long time. So, and the medicine had not kicked in yet for me to be a little bit clearer. So I think I got to that point. I just passed out and went to sleep. The government shutdown, which I've made mention of in another email, which I think I'm one of the few people that I know, as many lists as I'm on, that's actually mentioned the government shutdown in any which way or term, which is amazing from a whole bunch of people who claim to be such good email copywriters and use the stories of today and all this other bullshit. And yet, here we go. You're a citizen of the United States. You're traveling, and you don't mention the government shutdown. You don't mention how screwed up it is in the airport. I find it very interesting. These are for people who like to go out there and claim a lot on Facebook. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm on your list. I'm going to see what you do. Just like people jump on my list to see what I do. It is what it is on that side. But so the whole big thing is I've recently seen is the IRS. The people who process your taxes and all that other good stuff, right? Or bad stuff, depending on if you actually were paying your taxes or if you screwed up or if you have an IRS auditor coming after you. And, none of this stuff is cool, but it's a part of the whole process. It's part of, living in the United States, being able to benefit from living in the United States where you, for the most part, not always true, will probably have access to, most likely, not all the time, but sometimes you'll have access to clean water. I think for probably 90% of the population, that you will have access to the internet, that you would have access to, most of the time, not always, a justice system. Of course, it works better for you when you have money. That you'll have access to some basic human rights, that place that we live in, that we, for us Americans, we don't really think about too tough. That wonderful place. And sometimes live in this wonderful place, at times that it can be wonderful, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a nightmare, depending on who you are, where you're coming from. You have to pay some fees. You have to pay some dues. And those dues usually come in the form of taxes. Now, there's taxes for a whole bunch of other stuff. I live in New York City. I pay a crap ton of taxes, okay? Okay. But I appreciate when the taxes go to something most likely that's beneficial. It doesn't always happen, but that's what your vote is for, and putting people in the right places for, on your local office side. Doesn't always work, but at least you got the illusion of it, and sometimes you actually have some real power if you actually know how your system works. But since the government shutdown happened the way it happened, a lot of folks couldn't feed their families. A lot of folks had to go to market pantries. A lot of folks had to take charity donations. A lot of folks were getting bank loans, which they have to pay back once they get their first paycheck. Because I don't know if people notice this, actually, The shutdown ended last Friday, right? Friday evening. Those people still didn't get paid. They won't get paid until the week after next, actually. And a lot of people don't realize that they've gone so long without paychecks. A lot of them can't even get to work, even though you're supposed to come into work because they don't have any money to come into work. And I think that is sad. I think it's something that I'm always an advocate of. If you have a job, if it's a dream job or whatever, take your job, security, do what you got to do, and then have a side hustle. Like, I'm a big advocate for that. And if you've been on my list anytime, I've talked about the importance of having a side hustle. Now, maybe you just poo-pooed it. I think you should have a side hustle if you're an entrepreneur. I think you should have a side hustle if you're not an entrepreneur and you work a job every week. That's my philosophy. I have always held strong on that. Always. I'm a big fan of that stuff. But I think an article came out. I know an article came out because it's been posted on Facebook, so it has to be true. And I see people making fun of the IRS workers because they can't afford to come to work. So apparently it's a large number of IRS workers who did not come to work on today. They said, I think the estimate was 140,000 IRS workers did not go to work. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what I saw. So a lot of people, enough to affect shit. So think about it this way. If you're filing taxes and you thought you was going to get your little monies back or whatever, the delay on the federal taxes is going to be ridiculous. But I already knew that. As someone who's a former federal worker, I already knew that. Who's actually worked jobs and had to get paychecks, I know what it is. As someone who's also been laid off in her period, I know what it is. Like, so I empathized a bit with folks who have the ability to make my life a living hell. I empathized with them in their situation. I did. But I just saw some interesting quotes from folks who want to talk about how they want to help people, talk about good for them, a taste of their own medicine. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you can feel how you want to feel about the IRS. Maybe you had a horrible experience with them. I said, but I also know people who work for the IRS, and their job has nothing to do with whether or not someone comes after you for some damn tax shit. I mean, they're doing their job as it is described. If you think that majority of the IRS is waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to screw you personally, I think you're thinking a lot more. You have more of a personal thing against government or a personal thing against whatever than is the IRS. And I just looked at some of the quotes and people thought it was funny that 140,000 people didn't show up to work, and they thought it was funny that 140,000 people did not have the money to make it into work to actually earn money. They thought it was funny. They thought it was exciting. They got excited about the news, it seemed, based on some of the different stuff I've been seeing. And you can't tell me how much you care about people if you think it's comical that this is a situation for a small group of people in consideration of the population, and people who happen to work for an agency you don't like. I don't think most people like the IRS. It's a pain in the ass. You hope, God, please this year, no. But at the same time, I also think that there's 140,000 people who didn't go to work today from an organization because of a shutdown. And there's 140,000 families plus that may be a step closer to living in a shelter because of a government shutdown. There's a whole bunch of kids who might not be able to get the services they need because of that. Because sometimes, folks, you got to look beyond shit. You got to look beyond stuff. And it ain't easy. But that's why I have the picture of these dude wipes. You can go to Target and get you some dude wipes, and you can wipe yourself. Because I don't know, I just don't get excited I don't post memes about folks not being so broke that they can't get to work. And I've been broke before. I've been really broke. I wrote an email about me being broke and struggling to get home on a very cold night in NYC. And I was so hungry and I barely had enough money. And thank God I had enough money to actually go and get something to eat. And I had enough money to make it home because I was far from home. And I was really, really damn broke. And I know what that feeling is. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if I could just make it home, because at least I know I can go inside my warm apartment and I don't have to be out here or cuddle up in a corner or sleep in a subway. But if I could just make it home, if I could just get home. I remember going through that. It ain't the first time I went through stuff like that. So I don't find certain things as funny or funny at all that some people seem to find funny today. The same people cackling about it, or the same people who told me about them being homeless, told me about them not having anything to eat, told me about them losing their jobs and didn't have anywhere to go. The same people I see cackling on these posts have personally talked to me about their situations. I'm like, damn, I know you don't like the organization, but understand there are people in that organization feeds when they work. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the IRS, no. But you know what? For some people, they believe that was a stable government job and they were doing their job. You think the majority of those 140,000 people love working at the IRS? No, they're there because it's a government job. It's supposed to represent stability. As far as we know, the IRS is not going anywhere. They're less likely to get laid off if they work for the IRS. And it represents a way for them to feed themselves and their families, to support people. So you may not like the organization. Most of the times it's the rules and the guidelines. I mean, think about this one. The big wigs in the IRS, the people who get paid the most money, are not the people not showing up for work. The people not showing up for work in the IRS are the people who are sitting there behind the computers. The people who you walk past, you would spit at. The people who are doing customer service. I'm not saying that customer service is great, but those are the people who ain't showing up. It's not the people who are the heads of the heads of the heads who get salaries of 100K plus. It's not them who's not showing up to work. It's the janitors at the IRS who are not showing up to work for the building. So even though I know it's funny and it's cool to make fun of the article, there's one thing about copywriting that gets lost on a lot of people. And you have to have the ability to empathize with your audience. Because for all you know, there are people who work for the IRS right now in your Facebook book friends who are one of those 140,000 people. And now they see you laughing at them because it's cool to do so now. I get people telling me, oh, this is why I try to help people. How do you help people by making fun of other people who literally can't feed their kids right now? Like that, and trust me, I'm a big ass joker. I joke about a lot of stuff. How are you helping them? What are you doing to help them? If you're selling a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 course, that's not helping people. What are you doing to help people? And define what that means. I think we have to be very specific. Helping, how are you helping an IRS worker who only makes $45,000 a year? They cannot most likely afford a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 course. Am I telling you to cut your prices? Absolutely not. But let's be real. You're here to help people who have $3,000 to spare to invest in themselves. You cannot help someone who does not have it because that's not where your price point is. It's like with me. I'm honest about my shit. If you don't have any money, I can't help you in a way, in terms of marketing. I can't really help you much. I can't give you the same type of advice that I give some of the clients who pay me a lot more money because I charge a certain amount of money. I'm honest with it. I might be able to help you by pointing you in direction of someone that I know who is a lot cheaper. And me, I haven't I don't sell high ticket products as of yet. My most expensive product, I believe, is $315. My most expensive product. But my services are much more than that. But I don't try to be like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I can only help a certain group of people. And that's the way marketing is and business should be. You can only help a certain group of people. So there are businesses that help people who are medium incomes. There are businesses who help people who are much higher incomes that they don't even touch anybody else. Like, you want to go to a really good car dealership, go to a car dealership that sells Maseratis. They will treat you a lot differently than a dealership that's selling you a Toyota or a Nissan on a lower class car models. You get treated very differently. And they don't make no bones about who they're trying to help. If you got the money to get a Maserati, they got you. They can help you because you got the money. Because this is a business. So let's not mistake what we're here for. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business person. I'm a hustler with all my little side hustles going on. I do not mistake what I'm doing. I do not pretend that I am altruistic when I am not. I'm here to make money. I'm not BSing you. I'm not writing posts talking about this is why I'm here. No, I try to warn you. Like, look, if you have a job, please have a side hustle, or else this is the kind of stuff that can happen to you. I think some of the best combinations, honestly, are people who have jobs where it's a brainless job and is low stress and also have a side hustle. Because I think if, for example, you have student loans and you need to get rid of them, but just think, great, get you a stable job that pays you enough. Maybe a government job, maybe IRS is the great thing for you. I don't know. Where you don't have to do a lot of decision making, where you just got to get your work done, and you know at 5 o'clock you out of there, and you can spend the rest of the time working on your side hustle, pay off them student loans, take advantage of those government benefits, and then when that student loan is paid for, depending on how long it takes you, and your side hustle is making all that extra money, and you're investing in all these other things, you could quit that job and live a hell of a lot freer, or stay there for maybe another 10 years, or stay in there if that's what you choose to do, if it's not so bad, or you feel like getting a promotion, and you can leave a very rich person. I know people who've done it, okay? I know people who work government jobs and are retired themselves into millionaires because that's what they did. Government job, paid off the majority of their bills, started 2 side hustles, partnered with somebody else, got into other stuff, was making a lot more money than at their job, didn't quit their job, paid off all the student loans or whatever else, mortgage, whatever, or sent the kid to college and took advantage of the benefits, and then had their side hustle and then quit, and they're living a really, really good life. And I think that's a cool way of doing it if you choose to. That's not for everybody, but I don't think it's a bad idea to possibly do that for some people. But I know I'm gonna get flamed for saying this, but I'm always an advocate. Like, go do that. If that's works for you, go do you, baby. You have one life and it's your life. You have to make the decision as to how you want to spend it. Do you want to be in a good position at 60 and 70, or do you want to be straggling and waiting for money and praying for retirement? Because I've seen both ends of that stick, and I know I've already made the choice of how I would like to live my elder years if God spare life and I make it. But all in all, I just find it a little distasteful that people are finding it hilarious about what's happening. And it's not just the IRS. There's TSA workers. They didn't do the report on that have not gone to work because they cannot afford to get to the airports in other places. But I see people find it hilarious and think it's something to mock and want to pretend that they're being altruistic when they're not being altruistic. So let's not pretend that you are, because you don't even serve that market. Because the majority of the IRS workers do not make above $60,000. And you can find that out yourselves, but most of them don't. Or a lot of them will make 70, 75. Very few people will do. But I wanted to express that because I think we need to pause for a second and really take a look at what we're doing here. Like, I'm not in the business of, like, I like to joke. We can mock and have fun, but I just think certain things, is it funny? Yeah, it's ironic, but it's also going to be ironic when you need to file your tax returns and you're looking for that little bit of money back and you don't get it for 6 months. That's going to be funny because at the end of the day, when the IRS is not working, it means a lot of us are going to be kind of fucking screwed with our taxes. Because check this out. If Sally ain't at work and she's checking your taxes for your business at the IRS she's processing and your business taxes don't get processed, does that mean they're late? Does that, if you get your taxes processed and you're like, hey, Joe, you owe $1,000 to the IRS. Well, guess what? You got time to whip up a program to figure that thing out, to get another client paid off. But if Sally doesn't get the processing your thing until April 15th or April 16th, you don't have as much leeway. So think about it. It affects us all. I just think you got to really look at things from a different perspective. And I'm not here to be preachy, even though it sounds like that. I'm trying to get you guys to look at things from a different perspective. Because when you're writing copy, you got to come out of yourself. You can't write copy and be in your own perspective. That's the hardest part about writing copy, is that you got to come out of yourself in order to create the emotional triggers, in order to empathize with people so that you can write copy that appeals to them, that talks to them in a way that gets them to take action or what you want them to take action to. So instead of maybe making fun of government workers who can't afford to get to work this week because they haven't been paid in 3 weeks, maybe you should start to think about, what does it feel like to be told all your life to get a government job? You got the degree, you went and got the government job, you never missed a day of work, you covered for other people, you did your job, only to not be paid for 3 weeks. What does it look like not being able to pay your rent? What does it feel like not to be able to pay your mortgage? What does it feel like not to be able to buy underwear for your kid? What does it feel like not to be able to give your mom, who needs that $500 that you promised her, that $500? What does it feel like to be standing on an unemployment line applying, only to be told, well, you're employed, so therefore you can't get any benefits? What does it feel like to be in a position where you can lose your home, where you have creditors calling you all day long? What does that feel like? If you can take yourself out of yourself for a second and really truly empathize with the people in these situations, if you had to write, think about it this way, if you had to write a sales letter about starting a group around entrepreneurship or side hustles, and this is a perfect story to use, the government shutdown and the workers. If you can figure out how to empathize and really think about what I'm saying, you'll be able to write a bomb-ass sales message that will get these people, when they get these people or other people who see this and be like, oh shit, this could be me, to buy into your program that they would normally not have bought into. Think about it this way, but you gotta learn to empathize. So before you start laughing or thinking this shit is funny, start asking yourself this question: how can I put myself in that person's shoes? If I had to write that sales message, if I had to figure out a story, this is the story. How can I take myself out of my situation, put myself in the situation of someone in that situation? If you can figure out how to do that, you will write a really good sales message, a really good sales letter, a really good slew of emails that can help, that would probably convert really well with the right audience. I'm just saying, folks. Think about it this way. Learn how to empathize. Not just laugh or mock, but learn how to empathize. and you will be a much better copywriter and marketer than 80% of the people out here. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you guys later. I am the Supreme Leader H. Love, peace, and hopefully better health for me. Deuces.